Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Aaron with Help Me DIY. I have Jake Raby, who some of you may recognize on the call with me. He owns Flat Six Innovations, and I just purchased one of his engine kits. It is something that you can assemble by yourself, build your own engine, if you will. So I am very new to the engine assembly world. I have done one engine in my life. This is the second one, so I'm really looking forward to digging in again. And this time getting actual personal assistance from Jake through the M9Xperience. So Jake is going to join us today and go over a little bit of the basics, kind of explain this process, what you can expect out of it, what I can expect out of it. And then we're going to have a big series on how to build the engine. So you can follow along, either help you build your engine, or if you just want to see what it's like, see what it takes to build an engine, it can be your entertainment for the weekend.
So, yeah, thanks for having me on here again. I appreciate things like this. Everybody's got to start somewhere. And, one of the things I think is the most challenging for people is the intimidation factor of this. You look at all these parts and you look at how everything works, and it's just too much to handle. And the intimidation part, it breaks a lot of spirits and it keeps people from doing things, but it also is something to be respected. You really need to respect that intimidation factor because the engine's in charge. It just is. And it's almost better to be a little intimidated about things than it is to go in overconfident. And I see a lot of people cause themselves problems being overconfident because they come from other cars, or they even come from air-cooled Porsche engines, or Japanese cars or domestic cars or whatever. And with this engine, if you built a 427 when you were in high school, it doesn't matter if you built a Civic engine when you were in high school. It doesn't matter if you work on airplanes. It doesn't matter what you do. This engine, like every other engine out there, has a lot of idiosyncrasies. It has a lot of character traits. It has a lot of gotcha points. Every engine has those things. And that's something, I build all kinds of engines for all kinds of vehicles, tanks and this and that, whatever, it doesn't matter, tractors, unimogs, whatever. But when I go to something I haven't worked with before, I look at it and I want to be intimidated by it because that fear factor is going to make me research and make me learn and make me pay attention. So coming in overzealous and saying it's just an engine, those are the guys that are get themselves in big trouble because it's just an engine, but it's an engine you have no experience with. So the idea of this kit program is not really a kit, because to me a kit is like some gaskets, some basic pieces that have no preparation, they have no pre-assembly, they have no balance, they are not a combination of known items. That's not a kit to me, right? This is being a full experience makes it where you don't have to be an engine builder. You can just be an assembler. And honestly, in today's world, there's a lot of professionals that are nothing more than assemblers as well. So, building means, well, just like what I was doing downstairs a minute ago, making a part for an engine, right? And I looked up and I didn't know what time it was, and I missed the first 10 minutes of the call. But that's the difference between building and assembling. As a builder, I know what it takes so you can be set up as a successful assembler on your end. That's why you notice we gapped all the rings for you. We like indexed all the parts. We labeled where they go. We laser etched pieces so you couldn't mix them up. We dynamically balanced everything and we indexed that. Those are key things that make this be easy for you, where you don't have to have a ton of special tools or a lathe or a milling machine in your garage.
So I got all of the parts here, and I guess to start out, we want to talk about cleanliness, preparation, what you need at the very beginning to start putting this thing together.
Well, first off, your work area would drive me crazy.
Yeah, I know.
So, and trust me, it's just a discipline thing. So every engine builder out there, we all have disciplines. And when you walk into an engine shop, it's a lot different than walking into a car shop. When I see pictures of other people's shops and I see a guy building an engine and there's a car on the lift with a brake job going on, I'm like, it drives me crazy. That's not where engines get built. Engines get built in the most sterile environment possible. And that's one of the disciplines that you've got to have is, we only lay out the parts that we're going to work with at that time. And that's something you can do because literally everything is already comboed out for you. It's all cleaned. It just got to have a little bit of final cleaning done. But you can literally lay out the pieces to just get your crankshaft carrier built. Like that's the first thing we're going to do. So to me, what I would do is I would lay everything out. You got your chem wipes there. You got this, you've got that. But I would get my mind into just the things that are in front of me. Because ultimately, you may have this big, huge engine build to do, and it's got 400 pieces that go inside and outside this thing. But if you break it down into 15 steps, which is, well, really it's 20 steps if you follow my video, but ultimately it's a 15-step process that are small steps. And you only worry about that step. And I've used this analogy before, like you're trying to wire something, right? It's got a wire harness the size of your wrist. Don't worry about that. Look for the black wire with a red trace, and you connect that wire. Then you go to the white wire with a red trace, and you connect that wire. You worry about one wire at a time. And before you know it, then you've accomplished all these small steps that end up creating an engine. And that is how you fight the intimidation factor.
Yeah, it's very daunting when you get boxes of stuff and, I have parts laying all around my garage from the disassembled engine. So luckily I learned from the last engine I built that I didn't have any control over how it was disassembled and where the parts ended up. This time I have them all bagged and tagged and kind of laid out where I know where most of the stuff is at least. And now I have a lot of new parts to work with. And that's one of my favorite things is having nice, new, clean parts to put together, and it makes it a lot more enjoyable. I know I'm not having broken, greasy stuff everywhere.
Well, but it's important. Just like when you come to one of my hands-on classes, and the professional class is filled, the enthusiast class, I have not released the dates for that yet, but I'll have one of them in spring of 25. At any rate, it's key not to throw anything away. Right? Because you're creating your own resource material. Now with this kit or this M9Xperience process, you don't have to worry about this like you would if you were somebody working at home that hadn't purchased all these things comboed out with all the machine work and everything done, so you could just bolt it together. But it's important you have those old parts, because when we get to things like putting the timing chains on, I'm going to say, Aaron, go grab your old timing chains. Let's lay them next to the new ones and make sure they're the same length, because there's two different lengths of timing chains for these engines. Now, I know yours are good because we checked them. However, you assume nothing and you quantify everything. That is another difference in engine building discipline. And as soon as you say the other guy checked this, you've automatically made a mistake. Whether that mistake bites you in the ass or not is to be determined. But you never do that. As an engine builder, I don't trust anything that anybody gives me, no matter if it was even somebody else in my shop giving me a part. I don't trust it. I can't. So
it's a very good example of that right here.
Exactly. Yeah. So, we had a quality control issue, had to fix it, right? Had to swap a shaft out. It is what it is. Control had too much run. So, but ultimately we had to do some magic, and we had to swap a shaft out. Now, ultimately, I'll end up fixing that one because the problem is fixable, but I didn't want you to have to wait like 3 weeks to get that. So, but yeah, assuming nothing and quantifying everything is a key. The other key, on top of cleanliness and that, the nice, clean, arranged work area, is that you go into the job every day only thinking about this. Like, if your wife's mad at you about something, turn that off, or don't build the engine that day. If your kids are running around crazy, turn that off, or you don't work. These are disciplines that you've got to have. The other big one that engine builders have to have is if it doesn't feel right, you stop. And that means if it doesn't physically feel right, like to engine builders, tactile feedback is a big thing. You'll never see any videos or pictures of me building an engine where I'm using gloves, except in the video that we did, the professional video that you have a copy of. And I wore black gloves, so my hands didn't end up changing the focus of the camera, but it drove me crazy because I want to feel parts and I want to feel the assembly lube. You know, if you're wearing a glove and you get assembly lube that has some kind of contaminant in it, you can't feel that. And then you end up putting contaminated assembly lube on your part. If there's a burr on a part, you can't feel that. So nobody here wears these gloves. You don't see it. We want to see that tactile feedback. You've got to feel things. But again, being in the right mindset, in the right place is the key. You know, and I told you this before, but this is not something where you invite people over. You know, it's not something where you're sitting there jamming out to the radio. You know, you've got to be in your own space with this, and you've got to be immersed in it. And, you know, don't start it and say, well, you know, I got to be done because at 3:30 there's a birthday party or whatever. Then that means you're not working on it today. You don't quit when you're tired. You quit when you're done. You don't quit when the wife says to quit. You quit when you're done. Because if you walk away, the chances of you making a mistake when you come back or leaving something loose or not marking something or not torquing something are exacerbated immensely. So, and this is another discipline why a regular shop that has a lot of hustle and bustle and people walking around all the time, that's why engine shops don't have that. You know, it's just a different world. That's why we don't work on cars. We just build engines. So I think these are important things because it's things people overlook. You know, you wouldn't think that you've got to be that into it, but you really do.
Yeah, after my one engine build, I've already learned that for sure. Like, yeah, all of the things you said, if you leave and you haven't finished something, you come back the next time, you're like, where was I? Luckily for me, I made videos of the whole thing, so I could go back to the video and watch it. But if I didn't have that, I'd be screwed a lot of times.
Well, one big rule is if it's on, it's torqued, or if it's on, it's tight. So a big mistake people make, especially like with crankshaft pulley bolts, they leave them loose all the time because you put the crankshaft pulley on to be able to turn the engine over and feel it and stuff, and then you don't torque it. And then you go to crank the engine up and you never torqued it. So that's a big thing. If it's on, it's torqued. If it's on, it's tight because not everything has a torque value, right? So that's a huge, huge problem. So like in my M9Xperience video, you'll see that when we put the pulley on, I wrote on it, no torque. So if you have to put something like a pulley on or some fastener on, and you have to do that to mock something up, and you're afraid you might forget it, then you got to go back. You got to write yourself a note on the part, right? You know, hang a toe tag or something on the thing, zip tie something on it, write something on it, whatever you've got to do to remind yourself that you did not finish that task, because you're not going to remember it. You're going to come back and you're going to be focused on moving forward, and then you don't realize you left that bolt loose. And loose fasteners
this is my favorite engine building tool right here, the witness marker.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's why in my videos you see all the witness marks, and there's a discipline with that. You know, I've seen people like torque a bunch of stuff and then go put the witness marks on them. No, that's not how you do it. And I can tell when somebody does that. There's actually a guy out there that's pretending to be our competitor, which is kind of a joke. But at the end of the day, I can see when he puts witness marks on things that he's putting witness marks on in succession because they're all like in the same spot. So it's like he torqued a bunch of stuff up and then he went ... And it's the same thing as like when you were in school and you got in trouble and you had to write, I will not talk in class again 100 times. And you learned that it took you the same amount of time to write every sentence out as it did to go down there and write I 100 times, will 100 times, not 100 times. It's the same difference. Yeah. So if you torque it, you mark it right then. So, you know, that's a huge thing. I mean, it drives me nuts, but I can sit back and I can see that a guy that's building this stuff professionally, he wants to put a mark on it, but he torqued 8 things, and then he goes and puts 8 marks on. That's
Yeah, I
not
caught
how you
myself
do
being
that.
lazy. I caught myself being lazy doing that before too, and then you'd go back and I'd be like, did I really torque that one? I don't remember.
Well, I saw that in your video too.
Yeah, I
That's
was like,
another.
I just
I could see. It's like serial witness marking. You can tell.
yeah,
And as an aviation mechanic, they would bust our asses for that,
yeah,
right? Because the QA inspector or CDI would come up, and he's no spring chicken. The dude's been around the block. He knows. And if he
yeah,
sees serial witness marking, just like I'm grading somebody else who's posting pictures, we were getting graded. But the difference was, hey, give me 250 push-ups, or you're going to go walk around the squadron and pick up trash tomorrow. It's a different kind of deal. But at the
right.
end of the day, that is another discipline. Don't ever try to do something fast building an engine. Cutting a corner doesn't exist. You can't do it. If you cut corners, you've automatically failed.
Do we need to know anything else before we start assembling an engine?
Yeah, what you're going to do, right? So I think that the first key here, for you, let me ask you this: how many videos do you want to do about this? Do you want to do like every stage? Just do a video of every stage, or what's your plan?
Yeah, I think we'll do a video of every stage. That's what I did on the last one, and it worked well for putting them out there and making them not super long, where people lose interest and don't want to watch them, but also gives enough detail that if they're actually going to do it, they can use it for a reference in conjunction with all your videos. So
Well, that works. And when I did these stages, I built that engine just like I build an engine here. Some people are like, oh, I can put one of these together in 4 hours. And, if I'm pushed, I can do 2 of them in a day. Well, last time I checked, it took us 80 hours to create something. So at the end of the day, it's not about speed. It's about doing it right and doing it once, because there's always time to do it twice if you hurry through it, right? Um, but I think if you do the stages, that's how we build things. So usually, like, my goal for a day would be to get a certain stage done. And then the goal for the next day is to go into the next stage and finish that. Because ultimately, you got to remember, finishing a stage on Monday, that your job's not done when you finish the stage on Monday. What are you doing? You're preparing for the next stage. So that way you can start the next stage. So you never look at it like, I'm just going to do this stage today. Get that stage done, and then go into the second stage from a preparatory position, so you can make sure you've got everything. And you can make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, and you got the assembly lube, you got the gasket, you got the sealant. You know what I mean? You've got everything together. So you're not done with a stage when that stage work is done. You're getting ready for the second stage.
yeah, we found that like preparing things, finding the parts, getting them laid out, prepping, doing the research for what we're going to do, that takes way longer usually than the actual assembly of it. The assembly, of this, what I'm about to do will probably take me 15 or 20 minutes, but it takes hours to research, prepare, and get everything laid out.
Yeah, exactly. And cleaning things, but a lot of the hard cleaning's already been done with our ultrasonic equipment and all that for you. So I think that, yeah, if you go ahead and get your crankshaft carrier built up, right? Get the carrier assembly, maybe get all your rod bearings and main bearings laid out, make sure everything's good to go there. Get the rod bearings in the rods, and at least get the crankshaft into the carrier. That's like the minimum I would do for a stage.
Yeah.
And then the next stage is building the rest of the carrier up and adding the crank scraper that you've got there and the IMS and all those other things to have it ready to go into the case. So that's kind of, to me, the order in which you do things.
Yeah, so I have a video already on the 997 crankcase carrier, building all of that stuff. For this one, for my Cayman, you've already done all of that assembly for me. So mine is already completely built. So for people that are doing this, Jake's got a great video on it. I have a video on it on how to do that part of it. So that part's done. So my first actual assembly will just be adding the IMS carrier and the chains and stuff to the front of it. So
And the one thing I'll say is that as you go through, you might want to tell folks as you're doing the assembly, hey, this was already prepared for me, but you're going to have to prepare your own because
Yep.
that's a reality, right? I mean, ultimately, I want people that watch this video, this isn't about somebody putting together this kit. To me, this is about somebody building an engine that's going to end up with a confusingly similar output as to what I can create when I put this same thing together for you. But I think for people to appreciate what it takes to do it, now you've done this on your own with a stock, basically a lot of stock parts. I mean, you did make the engine bigger, but you left a lot of things stock. I mean, I would kind of call your engine that you built a stage 1. This is like a stage 3 that you're building here. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because you basically had stock heads and this and that, where you got big ported heads and the big big chambers and big everything. So I think that may help people understand it, because it's not about putting the kit together. It's about giving people confidence that you can do this, And I mean, when I first started with these engines, you couldn't even find a book. There was no videos. YouTube wasn't even a thing, right? It had just been like it was like open whatever, it just kind of started out. I mean, that's before the video thing was a big deal. Um, so there was no videos. There was nobody to go look at, and the manual was actually wrong. I made mistakes on my first build because I followed the manual, and we'll talk about that with a cam timing. I followed the factory manual, which the only one I could get was a UK release back in the day. And it left out a critical step, and that was turning the engine over between the bank 1 and bank 2 cam installation and timing.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, this is resource material that will empower people to do this work themselves.
All right. Thanks, Jake, so much for joining us. I'm really excited about this. Look forward to getting it started. So I'm going to start with the assembly. Hope you guys check out the next video. And then we'll get back with Jake after I get it together, and he will tell me how I did. So thanks, Jake.
All right. Thank you, man.